How long did it take you guys to dismember the body?
He threw away the last piece around last week, which was the torso and a leg bone. But there was no meat on it, it was just nothing but ribs and spine, hips.
I don't regret what I did, is what I'm saying. At the end of the day, I don't regret what I did.
Army deserters David DeGroat and Rainer Joyner calmly recall a crime beyond imagination. What began as a search for missing Army veteran Matthew McLaughlin soon spiraled into a weeks-long murder mystery.
He wanted me to hold the bags so he could dump the body parts in so he could make sure my DNA was on the bags as well.
This unexpected murder mystery would soon crack open a bizarre motive, leading detectives to one of the most disturbing confessions they had ever heard. Matthew had served in the U.S. Army alongside his two friends David and Rainer at Fort Benning, Georgia. However, both his friends had an active warrant for desertion from the Army. After leaving the Army, Matthew decided to give his life a fresh start and moved to Tres Piedras, New Mexico, where he worked at the Chili Line Depot. He began living with David and Rainer. However, he could never have anticipated that this very place would ultimately be where he would meet a tragic end. On July 31, 2024, Matthew's mother, Rebecca McLaughlin, grew concerned when she was unable to get in touch with him for a few days. She called one of Matthew's roommates and learned about his sudden disappearance. However, there were more alarming details that heightened her concern. Rebecca learned that Matthew had left without his phone and dog, and his friends had neither filed a missing persons report nor actively searched for him. These details ultimately compelled her to inform the authorities. As detectives began questioning David and Rainer, they initially appeared evasive and uncooperative in providing details about the incident, which eventually led detectives to consider them potential suspects. However, on August 17th, deputies obtained a search warrant for Matthew's home, detaining both suspects and brought them in for questioning. But this time, they have a different story to tell, revealing the dark truth that would ultimately leave nothing the same.
So I would say it was, for what Joyner was thinking, it was pre-plotted beforehand. Because I would tell him about Matt still had a drug habit and he was still talking, making rumors, everything, which kind of pissed off Joyner, so several occasions. Kind of told him, like, hey, no, don't kill him. Just, no, kick him off the property or something, or like give him a talking to again. To the point where it eventually came down to the point where he says that he was gonna go with the plan for Matt to get killed. So when Matthew was over in Colorado, dealing with the VA, getting all that stuff done for himself, went to go grocery store, pick up groceries. He got dropped off at Cassandra and Jason's house. I went to go walk with him as we walked up the road at the cart carrying the groceries of everything. As we got to an intersection, a shot rang out. Matt got shot in his right lung from Joyner's rifle, specifically his AR-15. Matt, not knowing what's happening, he did say, I got shot, and he starts to freak out. Then Joyner comes from around the corner with my Beretta. He sticks it to his face and shoots him in the jaw, which makes his eyes swell up. And he starts to choke at his blood as he hits the floor. And then he hovers over him with an execution shot and gets him right in the temple.
On your timeline, you have rough dates or that sort of stuff?
It's rough dates, but I would say July 25th is the execution date.
Okay.
Everything
Cool,
else
Russell.
is more just a murmur of a pre-plot that he made.
So my one question for you is I want you to explain to me the plan that you're talking about.
A plan to kill Matt that Joyner made.
Okay.
So his idea was initially he was going to come up the road that we were going to have, and he was going to try to snipe him with his 308 from a distance. And then his plan changed when Matt said he was getting dropped off over by the other road. So then Joyner's idea was he was going to take my Beretta so he can have a sidearm. And then he grabbed his AR and then waited in the bushes for us to come up, and he told me to stick to one side of the road and to be very loud when I'm near the area. So when he sees Matt come up on the side, despite how dark it is, he doesn't need to worry about who it is.
And so, more specifically on this plan, when it was discussed previously, how was it discussed?
It was discussed in person because he showed up a little bit beforehand when Matt wasn't there. He just tried to talk about it because he figured phones would be tapped in like that no matter what.
Was it earlier that day?
He did show up earlier that day for when that did happen. He had his van parked all the way at the beginning of the road where you saw me and Joyner come up. He had his van parked all the way down there. He had me walk him up. He tried to plan it about what was going to go down, saw that his plan was going to work into the other one, and then that was the execution he made. He told me preemptively, he said, "You're going to help me with this. You're going to help me with this. You're not going to tell anyone, or I will kill you." Because then I would be knowing too much.
You mentioned that you had convinced him not to kill him.
I tried to beforehand several times.
And it was that same day?
No, that was a few days beforehand when he brought Jerome over, and I told him about the situation, and he's just like, "I'm gonna kill him," and I was just like, "Calm down, don't kill him," and they just start ranting off.
Explain what made you decide to participate in the murder of your friend.
It was out of fear for my own safety, because he also dropped me off at my house for Christmas before, so he knows where my family lives. And I know he would be the type of man to do it as well.
Describe that.
I know he's the kind of man, he's angry enough, he'll just shoot someone just for talking. So if I became a loose end somehow, and he found out that I was talking about it, I'm pretty sure I would get an end cap in it as well. Have the same fate as Matt.
What makes you so fearful of Joyner?
It's because I know he's capable of doing it. Just because he says it, it also means he can do it. Because he says beforehand that he has killed someone around the property before with his dad. Which is believable, at least.
What role did you play in the body?
He had me just hold a bag open so he could dump all the parts in, so he could make sure my DNA was on it as well.
And how do you know that?
Because it's what he told me. He said, "You're going to join me, or you're going to get the same thing as he did. So you're going to help me with this body if you like it or not."
David recalls each detail with a chilling calm. He consistently attempts to portray Rayner as a man capable of extreme violence. These horrific details have not only stunned the detective, but it seems that the cat's frequent howling also expresses its disgust towards the monsters in human form. So far, David's disturbing revelations have only scratched the surface. What follows will be the unsettling chain of events that ultimately led to the final moments before Matthew tragically lost his life.
We know the two weapons that were used in the murder. What was used in the decapitation of your friend?
The decapitation the weapon used was a sledgehammer with the axe head on it that he bought from the store specifically for that purpose.
What was it bought from?
I'm guessing Harbor Freight or something like that.
So, before the execution of that plan, when you walked down to Matthew, why were you walking down to Matthew?
To help him with the groceries. He wanted to see the puppy.
Okay.
His groceries usually need at least 2 people because the way he piled up on top, it usually tips over, so someone needs to hold on to it.
And at that point in time, did you know that your friend was going to be shot?
Yes.
How did you know?
Because when I was walking down, I know Joyner's still behind me with his rifle. I still know the plan was that he had set in motion was still going to happen. But I didn't know what to think at the moment at the time. Kind of went numb for most of it.
You mentioned that Joyner told you to be loud.
Yes.
Were you loud?
I was loud when I was coming up to the area that he was.
And what were you doing to be loud?
Just talking to Matthew a little extra louder. Just kind of raising my voice or trying to make jokes.
When Matthew was initially shot, how far away was Joyner?
About from the door to, I'd say like the table in that corner. About that distance of him hiding in the bushes as it was dark outside. Almost no sunlight.
It's about 12 yards.
About so. So Joyner had a bucket down there because we brought me and Joyner after he killed him. He brought all the groceries and stuff back into the house, emptied everything into the house, grabbed the cart with a bucket and the hacksaw, and then he went back down with me to have watch. And then he grabbed his phones, his tablets, a small bag, his wallet, different personal things of personal identification to burn. Everything was getting put in that bucket. Then he had Joyner had me help him drag Matt behind the tree about like 200 feet past the road. And he went to go try to cut his leg with a hacksaw, but it didn't work. So he went to go put that in the bucket as well. And by the time me and Joyner got back to the house, he made a fire to burn out all of his belongings.
Dismembering Matt before or after I called you guys to ask where he was at?
It was beforehand, before the first initial call for the missing persons report. He already had no head and hands by that point. And then he had me hold the bag open, Joyner had me hold the bag open to put Matt's head and hands in the bag, and then put the bag in the bucket, and then he said he tossed it on the side of the ditch.
What day did you guys start dismembering that body?
I don't remember the day it was for dismembering. It was more just rough times of what it was, because it was almost a week before, almost a week after he died was when he started to dismember him, and it's when he smelled bad and started bloating.
Okay, how long did it take you guys to dismember the body?
He threw away the last piece around last week, which was the torso and a leg bone. But there was no meat on it, it was just nothing but ribs and spine, hips.
So to describe, before we get into the timesheet, timeline, describe what you mean by coaching.
He would he was coercing me on what to say, what not to say, like in terms like, we don't know Yo-Yo, I left at this time, he left at this time, he had these things.
So basically trying to make your guys' stories identical.
Yes.
Why didn't you come back to pick you up yesterday?
He was at work.
Okay.
And I was walking to the house, which is only 2 miles that way.
Okay. Explain that timeline to us.
So for the timeline, Matt's official date of death was July 25th. That's when Jordan shot him.
But, yeah, I appreciate you being honest, man.
It feels nice to actually tell someone.
I'm sure, man. That's a heavy burden to carry, bro. It's your friend. He was murdered, cold blood,
He was.
and chopped up. By what it sounds like, by people that he really trusted. According to his mom, he talked very highly about you guys.
He did. At least me. Because he told his mom he looked at me as a little brother as well. He wanted to protect me.
It's true.
Before detectives can recover from the shock of the unspeakable act of violence, they now shift their focus to Raynor. They want to determine whether his version will align with David's or if he has a different narrative to share. However, detectives are unaware that they are about to confront an emotionless suspect, and the disturbing details he will reveal will only make the plot even grimmer.
What took place? Just describe and explain to us the entire situation with Matthew.
Let's see. So, everything I told you last time we spoke about, like him spreading rumors and all that, wasn't a lie. That was all factual. Really, the only thing that changed from what I told you last time and me confessing was basically just the fact that when I confronted him, I didn't let him walk away. I shot him. So everything was pretty much the same. Like I said, he was spreading rumors, he was bringing drugs, he was bringing strangers. Hey. And I confronted him. I got pissed off and decided, you're not gonna give me the chance. And so I shot him. When they didn't have what I was looking for, I went to Harbor Freight, ended up deciding the best tool to use would be the splitter axe, and also bought some bags, 33-gallon trash bags. From there, went back up to the land, back up to that spot, cut off his head and hands, bagged him up, put him in the Harbor Freight bucket, drove back down the mountain, about 4 or 5 miles, found a deep drainage ditch, threw the bucket down there. That next Wednesday, which I think was about the 30th, 31st, Wednesday going into Thursday was my next time off. Next day off, so I went back up there Wednesday night, late Wednesday night, found the animals that already started to expedite the process, cut off his lower legs and forearms with the axe, bagged them up, set them aside, and bagged up his torso. Took it all back down, went to another drainage ditch that was further up, about 6 to 7 miles up the road. From there, you guys interviewed me a few days, sometime after that. It was around, August 16th, 15th, 16th. I don't regret what I did, is what I'm saying. At the end of the day, I don't regret what I did. That wasn't the same dude I started with, like I said before.
And why don't you regret it?
Honestly, I'm not. Truth be told, I've never been exactly had a normal sense of, I guess, a normal sense of humanity. I don't know how else to put that. I've always kind of been the odd one out when it comes to shit like that, and always been the first one to just say it's like, no, well, you can always deal with it. There's only one way to deal with a problem permanently. When I was in the Army, and I was going through OSIT, my first one actually had, my first one at the time actually forced me to go to behavioral health and talk to a counselor, because I didn't deal with kids in a normal way.
Did you plan to kill Matthew?
No, I actually never planned to kill him. I never planned to actually kill. I planned to kill him in the sense of, like, it wasn't premeditated. When I went up there, I was giving him one last chance to fix things. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "It's like, son, you're like me. You're going to like killing. You're going to find it easy." Shoot, I mean, I guess he's not wrong. But, so, okay.
Have you ever killed anybody else?
No.
This is your first time ever murdering somebody?
Yes.
Rayner's chilling comments and lack of remorse provide a glimpse into his troubled mind. He claims that his father had told him that he would grow up loving to kill, suggesting killing Matthew was easy for him. It all began 2 weeks before the murder, when Rayner discussed killing Matthew over a disagreement about his substance use and alleged rumors. 3 days before the murder, Rayner threatened David with death if he didn't assist him in carrying out the crime. On July 25th, both finally began executing the plan. Rayner instructed David to walk Matthew to a nearby road near their residence and be loud enough so he could know their location. As David and Matthew reached the intersection, Rayner ambushed them and shot Matthew in the right lung using an AR-15 rifle. He then approached him further, shooting him again in the jaw with David's Beretta handgun before delivering the final, fatal shot to his temple. Both Rayner and David dragged his body behind a pine tree and burned Matthew's phone, wallet, and tablets. Rayner then began dismembering Matthew's legs with a hacksaw, but the blade broke, forcing him to leave Matthew there. A week later, on July 31st, Rayner returned to check on Matthew's body, which had begun to bloat and stink. He had specifically purchased a sledgehammer axe to dismember his body. He severed his hands and head, placed them in a bucket, and threw them in a drainage ditch. A few days later, he returned and decapitated his limbs. Both were carrying out this atrocious act while officers were frantically searching for Matthew. On August 11th, a few days before their arrest, when Rayner and David came back to check on the remains, they discovered that the wild dogs had moved some of the remains, leaving a few at the scene. Rayner told David one last time to help him bag the remaining parts, which he then dumped by the side of the road. As the missing pieces of the puzzle finally fall into place, these unspeakable atrocities become increasingly difficult for anyone to grasp. Even though Rayner's statement completely aligns with David's, detectives uncover an inconsistency. While David insists that the act was premeditated, Rayner adamantly sticks to his version that it was spontaneous. Despite his claims, detectives conclude that the act was premeditated based on Rayner's planning, ambush setup, and threats to David. As the interview reaches its conclusion, Rayner decides to aid detectives in locating the site where he had dumped the remains, which were later identified as those of Matthew McLaughlin. Both ultimately headed down a path with no way out. Rayner Joyner was charged with first-degree murder, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, aggravated battery, tampering with evidence, and abuse of a corpse. He is expected to go on trial in 2026. On the other hand, David DeGroat was charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and tampering with evidence. He is currently held without a bond.